There are probably very, very few of us that would admit that we enjoy sitting in discomfort. But how often are we presented situations by the universe, by the lives that are manifest around us, that require us to sit in the ability to not know, that require us to sit in the discomfort of not knowing how to move forward? That's the general energy of the cosmological narrative for this weekend, October 18th and October 19th. So let's dive into it. The first aspect that we're going to look at is one that's taking place on October 18th, which is the moon in Virgo opposite Saturn retrograde in Pisces. The second aspect we're going to look at for the 18th is this minor grand trine that the moon is forming in conjunction with Jupiter in Cancer in the superior position trine, but also connecting loosely with Lilith in Scorpio. And then we're going to look at a couple transits for the 19th, such as the moon conjunct Venus in Libra, the sun in its fall in Libra, making a quincunx to Saturn retrograde in Pisces, as well as Mercury going conjunct with Mars in Scorpio, which is an aspect that's going to be flavoring our days for over the next week at least. And they all have a part to play in this story that's unfolding over this weekend. So let's back up. What's the prelude to the story that's taking place this weekend? If you haven't been keeping up and watching my videos, over the last week, we have been working through achieving a new level of egoic confidence so that we can pursue the desires that Venus represents in our lives. Venus, for a while now, had been going through Virgo, co-present with the sign of the South Node, which suggests that we were going through a very deep transformative process. Despite it being Virgo and not a sign like Scorpio, we were going through a very transformative process where we were likely purifying and refining what Venus represents in terms of what we desire in our life. Co-present with the sign of the South Node in Virgo, that even suggests that we were probably letting go of comforts and desires that kept us in a body of stasis, that kept us from moving forward. Because we have to remember, what does the South Node and the North Node represent? I like to think of the North Node being 60 miles per hour on a speed gauge and the South Node being 0 miles per hour. Of course, the South Node can represent karmic, obstacles and baggage from past lives. And the North Node can represent our trials and tribulations and challenges in this life, or like the discomforts of what we need to expand into. But I like to think about it as this oscillating gauge between going really slow and going really fast. The closer we get to fast, the higher risk we have in life to be brought with situations that are uncomfortable and challenging and force us to step out of our fear body. The closer we drive to zero, we're not really being asked to really step outside of ourselves too much. And so with Venus co-present with the South Node in Virgo over the last several weeks, we've been stripping and refining away our desire body and chipping away. Venus moved into Libra, a couple days ago now at this point. So our desire body has been working through a sense of balance. And with that balance, we're coming to terms with what we need to change in ourselves, what wounds we need to conquer, what insecurities, what fears we need to get over in order to be on that new quest, that new timeline to achieve balance for our Venetian desires. And because Venus is moving through Libra right now, a lot of this is probably trying to bring a sense of harmony and balance, very Libran qualities, a sense of karmic balance to our relationships with the external. And that's, other people, relationships with ourselves, relationships with money, relationships with environment, etc., etc. So let's go back and let's talk about the aspects that are forming this weekend over the 18th and the 19th, because as this weekend is wrapping up, we're coming off of all of this instigation of wounds that Chiron represents being shown to us full blast with the sun in opposition with Chiron. And we had that really intense T-square this week where we're being asked to confront wounds in the Aries section of our chart, our childhood wounds coming through that lens of our life. And those were also obstacles and structures of belief or programming that Neptune retrograde in Aries has been asking us to dissolve, and he's about to re-ingress into his domicile of Pisces. So when the moon is in Virgo, opposite Saturn retrograde in Pisces, our emotional body is resonating with a sense of productivity. What is Virgo at its core quality? Virgo at its core quality is very fixated with routine and ritual, essentially getting things done, putting things into place. And when the moon is in Virgo, our emotional body resonates with a sense of productivity. There is this general sense that productivity brings us beneficial feelings. It's not like when the moon is in Capricorn, where we have to detach from our emotions and we're just kind of ready to lay the bricks, so to speak. We're just ready to get out there in the sun, sweat a little bit, wipe it off, and not let our feelings get to us too much. That's not how Virgo's work ethic works. Virgo's work ethic works because we're actually being provided a sense of like benefit. We're being provided a sense of good feeling, good sensation with the work that needs to be done. And we're also, again, in getting the work done, we're working smarter, not working harder. And, when the moon's in Capricorn, we have a predisposition to work harder, not smarter. So with this opposition with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, Saturn retrograde in Pisces has been giving us mental stimulus that's causing us and asking us to reflect on where we are not building foundations and structures with the divine. The irony of Saturn in Pisces is that Saturn often will tell us the bridge that you need to build with the divine is divine trust. The bridge that you need to build with the divine is a meditation practice, is a contemplation practice, it's a journaling practice. It's bringing a sense of divine surrender, divine peace, and a comprehension of divine timing and purpose to our lives and essentially attributing structure to it. It's not a way in which Saturn would normally ask us to construct structure in our lives because, again, Pisces is formless. Saturn is form. Saturn is asking us to bring form to the formless. So you're essentially in a compromisation pattern in and of itself, just with Saturn being in Pisces. So when Saturn is in Pisces retrograde opposite the moon in Virgo, we have this impetuous desire to be strategic, to be precise, to get the work done. We've essentially worked through this past week where we have come into connection and we recognize what it is that our Venetian desires are now representing in our life because we had this new version of our egoic sense of Virgo born under the solar eclipse September 21st, which was co-present with Venus and the South Node in Virgo. So again, we have this sense of like wanting to be precise and put the work and get things done. We're like ready. It's essentially like this feeling of like ready to get to work, ready to get to work. But Saturn in Pisces is saying, well, hold your horses. There's a structure I need you to, build in your life. And it might actually be with just recognizing that you can't always just continue to lay bricks and expect that you're going to see the results. Sometimes you just have to let time and patience manifest a reality for you. And I could see the moon in Virgo opposite Saturn Pisces being a sense of frustration building in us because we're like ready to get to work. But Saturn's like, wait, hold on. The divine is saying it's not time for you to get to work. But we're like, no, it is. And Saturn's like, no, it's not. Hold on. You'll know when it's time to move forward, and it's going to be very obvious to you. Now, again, we have this minor grand trine that the moon is also forming in conjunction with Jupiter in the superior trine position and Lilith as a support in Scorpio. Lilith and Jupiter have been playing back and forth for several weeks now. I think it's actually been a couple months now that they're just kind of ebbing back and forth within that 3 degrees orbit where they're still affecting each other. And with Jupiter in the superior position trine with Lilith, essentially Jupiter has been using Lilith in the scorpionic area of our chart, Lilith representing the misdirected power. This is where we have addictions and escapisms that we could tweak that energy, tweak that power, and make it a little bit better useful, better use for us, especially in a sign like Scorpio, where we're being asked to acknowledge what that misdirected power is and transform it into something that works better for us. And so with Jupiter in the superior position trine alone with Lilith, basically Jupiter has been using Lilith to show us, hey, these are areas of your chart where you could self-nurture yourself better if you redirected your power a little bit. And when the moon perfects that minor grand trine, we have a harmonious blend of energy where there is emotional flow between Lilith and Jupiter that is pushing through our emotional body, that is seeking to be strategic and get to work. And essentially what this suggests to me is that our emotional body is very much resonating with like this middle ground of like, I know I need to care for myself. I know I need to make these transformative changes in the scorpionic area of my life, which we'll get to more in a minute. And it's all being funneled through this perspective where Jupiter is essentially showing us there is this opportunity to both self-care, self-nurture ourselves in the Cancerian area of our life, but also that we can get things done while still remembering to self-care for ourselves. So on Sunday the 19th, the moon will then move into Libra and be conjunct with Venus in her domicile in Libra. So what that suggests is that our emotional body is going to move from trying to be strategic, motivated, precise, and action-oriented into a sense of a little bit more like our emotional body will become a little bit more diplomatic, will become a little bit more emotionally focused on bringing harmony to our relationships just naturally as a mundane manifestation of the moon in Libra. And when the moon goes conjunct with Venus in Libra, we're going to emotionally connect, will emotionally resonate, even if it's only for a couple hours over the course of Sunday, with where our Venetian desires are taking us in life. Again, because Venus is seeking balance in the sign of Libra, so we're seeing where we need to balance the scales in our lives, in the Libran section of our chart in order to continue to step forward on that quest towards our desire body. And the moon going conjunct with Venus in Libra suggests that there's going to be probably some sort of mental stimulus, something that comes through the body of communication. Perhaps it's conversation with a partner, a friend, a family member, where you suddenly see where your emotional transformation has been taking you and how it is leading you towards this greater Venetian body. That sense of recognition is represented by the sun in its fall in Libra. The sun is our egoic body at that day and time. So when you are watching this, you are your egoic sun body in Libra. That is who you are right now. When the sun moves into Scorpio, your egoic body will be exploring the scorpionic area of your chart, and that'll be the focus for that season. So the sun in its fall in Libra, making this quincux to Saturn retrograde in Pisces on the 19th, while concurrently the moon is conjunct with Venus, suggests that, again, our emotional body is resonating with where Venus is taking us on our journey, and it's causing form to our ego. It's essentially creating a stern backbone to our ego where we're being positioned and we're recognizing who we were, who we're transforming into. And again, with the sun being in Libra, the focus is on bringing balance to our relationships environmentally and situationally, or with money, tasks, work, etc. Whatever you need to bring harmony and balance to in your life, again, but from a relational perspective. The sun in the quincux position with Saturn retrograde in Pisces suggests that we're recognizing where we're going, but again, we're still in this holding pattern over this weekend because the quincux is a push-pull. There is no ability to compromise with a quincux. We have to sit in the discomfort of knowing that we're not at the right time in the timeline to take action. And so I could see this as being another frustrating aspect where our egoic body is feeling this tension with Saturn asking us to basically say, hold your horses, wait for the divine to be ready for you, and our ego in the sign of Libra is essentially like, well, no, I'm ready to work, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to move forward. I recognize and see where I need to bring balance into my life. I recognize how bringing balance into my life is going to allow me a greater achievement and pursuit of my Venetian values. But Saturn is saying, well, hold on. You might be ready, but the divine isn't ready for you to move forward on your plans because there is something outside of the human scope of comprehension that still needs to take place. A lesson learned, something in your external environment, something that has nothing to do with you, that you just find yourself at the right place in the right time a month or two from now, which allows you to achieve your Venetian desires and grow into a greater sense of your egoic body. The last aspect we're going to talk about, which is questionably the most important, but it's probably something that we're going to cover again this coming week because it continues throughout the week, is Mercury in Scorpio conjunct Mars in its domicile in Scorpio. And we're going to actually see this aspect continue, I believe, until October 24th. They'll be like in a very tight 3-degree conjunction, and I think it's going to extend, the 3-degree range will extend beyond that. But arguably, we're going to feel this for the next week. And this is probably going to motivate a lot of this frustration, because Mercury in Scorpio is the detective. Mars in Scorpio is the find things that need to be transformed in the scorpionic area of our chart and get it done. So when Mercury is combining with Mars in a conjunction and both of their energies are both synergized and amplified in this conjunction, Mercury is walking around the Scorpio house of your life, picking things up off the floor and saying, Mars, I need to fix this. Mars, this needs to be transformed. Mars, we need to do something with this. And they're kind of just going through and just picking things up. And you're kind of watching Mercury and Mars in the scorpionic area of your chart throwing up flags about all the stuff that needs to change, and Mars is immediately getting to it. There's no waiting for Mars to be at the perfect moment to get things done. So it's like we're being really hyper driven both through perception and vigilance of acknowledging and through data and perception recognizing all of these things that need to change in the scorpionic area of our chart. We're super driven to get it done because Mars is in its domicile. However, Saturn is in Pisces, continually putting us in a position where it's like, well, I get that you want to transform, I get that you want to work, but hold on, the divine isn't ready for you. The divine is glad that you recognize where you need to transform and where you need to get the work done, but it's not time, so continue to hold that energy for when it is time. If you enjoy these astrological and spiritual narratives, I encourage you to check out my weekly astrological and divination-based spiritual workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. I hold it every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at the link in my bio, which is an evergreen link, so you're always signing up for the next week's class, and you will always get an email invite. It's limited to 10 seats per week. It's a very intimate affair, so make sure you sign up 5 to 10 minutes beforehand. We get together and we review the prior week's transits and the subsequent week's transits, and I teach you how to delineate where transits and celestial bodies are taking place in your spiritual narrative to better integrate the lessons of the Creator and the gods so that we can continue our conscious evolution in this life and get towards a greater sense of fulfillment in this human body. The second quick promotion I have is if you're interested in booking a reading with me, I do a variety of different types of readings. I do natal charts, solar returns, lunar returns, progression charts. Let's look at your cosmological narrative for the year with focus questions. We can do a lot of different things and we can explore a lot of different things. I have financial and hardship pricing available. So if you cannot afford my given rates that are posted on TikTok, Instagram, or at the link in my bio, and you can message me on all three of those, I am more than happy to help, and let's get us into a rate position that works for you. Astrology is a sacred tool. It's a sacred topic. Let's not make it exclusive for the wealthy or those that can afford private astrologers. If I don't see you in my DMs for a reading, I will see you in class. And if I don't see you in class, I'll see you at my next video. Y'all have a productive and wonderful weekend. And make sure you hold that tension and recognize where it needs to be directed to when the opportunity presents itself, which will likely come in the skies next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.